while I found myself repairing a broken kitchen tile at midnight. After a long day of assembling furniture at her sister's apartment, I overheard my wife on speakerphone. She was telling her sister, "He thinks fixing things makes him a man. He's just a maintenance worker." "I never have to pay," her sister jokingly replied. "At least you don't have to tip him." LOL. Cement dust clung to my skin, and my hands were rough and cracking, but I finished the repair job for days later. Eventually, she felt sorry for her words. To give you some background, I'm 37 and my wife, Elaine, is 33. We've been married for 7 years, living in a starter home in a developing neighborhood, where our only real commitment is the mortgage, basically the best we could afford. Growing up, I learned to fix things from my dad, mastering everything from plumbing to electrical work and carpentry. These skills have saved us thousands over the years, and I've always taken immense pride in being the person who can handle anything that breaks at home. Our fridge was making this bizarre noise, but I got it fixed. The toilet wouldn't stop running, but I managed to handle that too. The deck needed rebuilding, and I tackled it all in a single weekend. I'm not trying to boast here. It just feels incredibly satisfying to fix things. Don't you think? Now, let's fast forward to last Saturday. Elaine's sister, Amber, who's 31, recently moved into an overpriced apartment on the other side of town. She called us Friday night, absolutely frantic because her flat-pack furniture had arrived, and the instructions were giving her nightmares. Without a second thought, Elaine volunteered me to help out, not even checking if I had other plans. So, there I was, spending my entire Saturday at Amber's place, from 8 in the morning until 7 at night, trapped in what had felt like a furniture assembly marathon. I was faced with 2 bookshelves, a TV stand, a dining table with 6 chairs, and the ultimate challenge, a bed frame with storage. If you've ever tried to decipher those instruction sheets with the little stick figure, you know exactly what kind of pain I'm talking about. It was a day filled with countless little hurdles, but we made it through. Elaine and Amber exchanged glances, sharing that secret laughter when I can't seem to locate the right Allen wrench. Their hushed whispers, just out of earshot, make me think maybe it's just a sister thing. Exhausted, I finally make it home, feeling like I've endured a brutal workout. My back aches as if I've taken a few too many swings from a baseball bat, and my fingers are sore from wrestling with tiny screws all day. All I'm dreaming of is a hot shower and a long sleep. But as soon as I step into the kitchen, Elaine points accusingly at a broken floor tile near the sink. "It's been wobbly for days," she says, "and might trip someone." Despite my better judgment, I find myself unable to refuse her. So, there I am, past midnight, on my hands and knees, scraping out grout while Elaine relaxes in the living room, engrossed in one of those reality TV shows. When I get to work on the tile, I realize it's completely loose. Water has seeped in, making the subfloor soft and unstable. This is no quick fix. I have to pull up the tile, dry out the mess beneath, patch the subfloor, wait for everything to set, and eventually replace the tile. It's going to be a long night. Covered in cement dust, my hands were cracked and bleeding from the day's relentless work. Exhaustion was pulling at me, but I forced myself to stay awake, knowing that dealing with water damage was urgent. That's when I heard Elaine's phone ring, and she put it on speaker. Seriously, why do people do that? On the other end was Amber, talking first about some drama with her coworker. Then, she casually inquired about the state of the furniture and asked if the handyman, referring to me, was still hard at work. What Elaine said next stopped me in my tracks, trowel in hand. With a dismissive tone, she told Amber I was still working on the kitchen tiles. She said something like, "He thinks fixing things makes him a man. He's just a maintenance guy I never pay." And Amber, whom I'd just sacrificed my entire Saturday to help, chimed in with a laugh. "At least you don't have to tip him, LOL." It was a gut punch that transcended exhaustion, leaving me frozen in place. They both erupted into laughter, not just a quiet giggle, but full-blown cackling. Meanwhile, I sat there, covered in dust, my hands literally bleeding after 11 long hours spent helping her ungrateful sister. And there they were, laughing about how I was their unpaid handyman. For a fleeting moment, I imagined myself storming in, hurling the trowel across the room in a dramatic outburst. But instead, something inside me turned cold. I stayed silent and kept working. I finished the tile, and it turned out perfectly. As I tittied up, a flood of memories hit me. I thought about how Elaine introduces me to her work friends without mentioning a single one of my skills or hobbies. How she always calls her dad for advice whenever I start a big project, even though he can barely change a light bulb. How she boasts about the renovated. I found myself lying in bed around 2 a.m., the weight of exhaustion settling over me like a heavy blanket. Elaine lay beside me, deep in sleeper, perhaps feigning it. My gaze traced the slow, deliberate circles of the ceiling fan above, the very one I had installed just last summer. As I watched its steady rhythm, I couldn't help but reflect on the times Elaine had proudly dubbed me her handyman to her friends. I always took those words as a heartfelt compliment, a badge of love. But last night, I came to a stark realization. What I once considered affectionate now felt like an understatement of my efforts. You see, it wasn't just the tiles that crackety felt something shift inside me, something crucial to my sense of being valued in our home. The next morning heralded a quiet transformation within me, though Elaine seemed unaware of the change. I spent that Sunday silently tallying the countless renovations and repairs I'd poured my sweat into over the years. Memories flooded back off the kitchen backsplash that devoured 3 entire weekends to perfect, and the deck that I painstakingly restored to life. Each project was a testament to my commitment and care, tokens of the investment I had made in building this life we shared. I discovered something dreadful. Rot. The bathroom, which I had painstakingly gutted and renovated after finding mold, now seemed tainted by the memory. The custom shelving in her office, always a topic of admiration from her colleagues during Zoom meetings, felt like another item on my never-ending list of thankless repairs. By Monday morning, a plan formed in my mind, not one fueled by anger where I would trash her belongings or change the locks, but something colder, more meticulously thought out. If my role had boiled down to unpaid maintenance work, then perhaps it was time to stage a silent protest. During my lunch break, I made a quiet statement of independence by opening a new bank account just so I'd have options. That evening, when Elaine commented on an odd noise coming from the dishwasher, I simply acknowledged it with a nod and a huh, weird. As I continued to scroll through my phone, her eyes bore into me with anticipation. Aren't you going to check it? She finally asked. I simply shrugged. Perhaps tomorrow, I thought. Exhaustion had taken its toll on me. Her look of bewilderment was only the beginning of what would unfold. For the next 3 days, I roamed around the house doing absolutely nothing. No minor repairs, no acknowledgement of her honey-do request. Then, on the 4th day, failure, perhaps irony, intervened. The dishwasher broke down entirely, sending a river of water cascading across the floor. Elaine was in a panic, texting me frantically while I was at work. It was in that moment I casually responded with the 5 words that would change everything. Maybe call a maintenance worker. Little did she know what was coming next. Truth be told, neither did I, but there was one thing I was certain of. I refused to remain the unappreciated handyman in my own marriage any longer. Wow, the feedback from my last post was overwhelming. I can't believe how many of you resonated with my story. Thank you all for the incredible support. The messages and awards have poured in, and many of you are eager for an update. So, hold onto your hats, because this story takes a wild turn. I've always thought of myself as someone who doesn't hold grudges, but that night with the tile changed everything for me. It wasn't just Elaine's words, they were the catalyst for years of feeling unappreciated, all crashing down in one powerful moment. It all started with a text I sent her about calling someone in for maintenance. Little did I know that it was just the tip of the iceberg. Then, the dishwasher decided to give out water everywhere, that unmistakable smoky, electrical smell filling the air, whole disastrous package. Usually, I be the one to roll up my sleeves, get down on the floor, and fix it myself. But this time, I simply stepped over the growing puddle, grabbed a beer, and sank into the couch, letting the chaos unfold around me. It was a small act of rebellion that felt oddly freeing. Elaine kept casting these incredulous glances my way, her eyes full of disbelief. Finally, she mustered the courage to ask if I planned to fix the issue. I just shrugged, casually mentioning the exhaustion from work. The bewilderment etched on her face was oddly satisfying, though I'm not exactly proud of that feeling. After 7 years of marriage, my decision not to immediately leap into action over a minor crisis like I usually would was met with pure astonishment, as if I had sprouted a second head overnight. But this was about more than a mere act of defiance. It was a calculated move to illustrate my contributions. I needed her to truly see the value I brought to our partnership. So, a plan began to take shape. First, I set about separating our finances. The day after the kitchen fiasco, I discreetly opened a personal account and redirected my paychecks into it. I ensured there was still enough left in our joint account to meet my share of the mortgage and bills, but I removed everything beyond that. No extra savings for a rainy day. No budget set aside for unexpected repairs. Next, I resolved to completely step back from all maintenance duties around the house. Suddenly, every little thing needing attention around our house became Elaine's responsibility. Whether it was a leaky faucet or a strange noise coming from the attic, I mentally put it in the not my problem box. If a cabinet hinge was loose, I left it up to fate and Elaine. I had a plan, though. Step 3. Document everything. I began diligently logging each repair request and the potential costs if we were to hire someone. I had a feeling this record would be invaluable down the line. The first week was relatively calm. Elaine frequently asked me when I planned to tackle the dishwasher issue, but I only offered non-committal responses, hoping to delay the inevitable. Eventually, she took matters into her own hands and called a repair technician. When he quoted $375 just for the service call, her expression was absolutely priceless. Then came the kicker. The control board was fried, and fixing it would be another $400 plus labor. In disbelief, she picked up the phone and called her dad, hoping he could tackle the repair. It's the same dad who once got a shock while attempting to change a light switch. I had to stifle a laugh. Meanwhile, I found myself spending my evenings catching up with my old buddy, Joel. We used to work together before I landed my current job. Joel had been trying to convince me to join his team for years, and suddenly, I was considering it. The pay was comparable, but the hours were different linger days with more flexibility. More importantly, it offered an escape from the house, something I desperately needed. By about the 10th day of my strike, even the washing machine seemed to want a piece of the action. It began to make this horrendous grinding noise every time it hit the spin cycle. Elaine gave me a look that screamed, "Help." But instead of diving into yet another repair, I opted to pop in my earbuds and tune out the chaos. 2 days later, I pulled into the driveway to find a repair van parked out front. Turns out, the washing machine needed a new transmission, and it was going to cost us a whopping $800. Elaine was livid. I could see the words forming in her eyes. "Why aren't you fixing things for free anymore?" But she stayed silent, perhaps knowing there was no fair demand in that. That weekend, we headed to Elaine's parents' anniversary dinner. The entire family gathered, including her cousin Amber. Halfway through the meal, Amber leaned over with a smirk and asked how our home projects were coming along. Her sly grin made my blood boil. Trying to keep my cool, I simply shrugged and replied that we were taking a break from home improvements. While we were at dinner, Elaine's mom casually mentioned that their garbage disposal was acting up. Without missing a beat, Elaine eagerly suggested that I could take a look at it. I met her gaze, unwavering, and firmly replied, "I don't do free maintenance work anymore." An unsettling silence gripped the table. Elaine's expression shifted rapidly through a whirlwind of emotions, and Amber almost spat out her wine in surprise. The car ride home was fraught with tension. Eventually, Elaine broke the silence, asking me why I'd been acting differently lately. I confessed, telling her I was fed up with being the go-to-handy man without any appreciation. She tried to convince me that she did appreciate me, but I just cranked up the radio, drowning out the conversation. By the third week, our world seemed to mirror our turmoil of everything began to fall apart. The air conditioning failed just as a heat wave struck, with outdoor temperatures scorching at 97 degrees. Inside, our home felt more like a steamy sauna than a sanctuary. Normally, I would have dived right into fixing the problem, but now, instead of checking the capacitor or the refrigerant levels, I hastily packed some clothes and let Elaine know I'd be staying at Joel's until the issue was resolved. As it turned out, the repair would cost a staggering $1,400. During this time, I found myself spending nearly every evening with Joel. I was captivated by his business and eager to find my place in it. Late nights became a routine. He'd return home, only to crash in the guest room, claiming the master bedroom was unbearably hot without functioning air conditioning. Elaine and I were living more like distant housemates than a couple. The final straw came when the garage door opener broke down. Not only did it stop working, but it also jammed with the door stuck halfway open, necessitating a complete disassembly to close it manually. Elaine reached out to me at work, clearly stressed about the situation, but I just sent her a link to a repair service. That evening, I walked in to find her at the kitchen table, surrounded by a teetering pile of repair bills and clutching a calculator. Her eyes were red from tears, and as she looked up at me, I could see the exhaustion and frustration in her face. The grim total stared back at us from the pauper bitter testament to the costs that had become more than just financial burdens. In just the span of 3 weeks, slightly over $3,000 had slipped through our fingers. She looked up at me with a voice so fragile, questioning what was happening to us and our lives. For a fleeting moment, I almost let my emotions take over. But then, the memory of her laughing resurfaced, that same laugh that echoed while I lay bleeding on our kitchen floor. I took a deep breath and sat down, calmly explaining that I had taken a new job with Joel. The hours would be different, yet the pay remained unchanged. Most importantly, it was a change that promised happiness. She immediately inquired if my decision was related to my abrupt halt in fixing things. I gave a casual shrug, suggesting perhaps she might want to reach out to a maintenance worker instead. After all, they essentially did the same work as I did, didn't they? Her expression fell as the realization of her past words dawned upon her. Before she could say anything further, I delivered the final piece of news. I had scheduled a meeting with a real estate agent to discuss the potential value of our home. If we decided to sell it, considering all the sweat equity I'd invested in unpaid maintenance and renovations, it would be hard to let go. That's when she completely broke down. Through her sobs, she confessed she remembered what she had said to Amber that night. She insisted she hadn't meant it and was merely trying to impress her sister. I almost felt a pang of guilt. Almost. But then she asked something that took me by surprise. She wanted to know the actual dollar value of all the work I had done around the house. I realized in that moment that I had been waiting for this question. Calmly, I reached for my phone, opened the Notes app, and slid it across the table to her. Documented there were 7 years of repairs, renovations, and upkeep, each painstakingly listed with estimated market rates for every task. The total at the bottom left her speechless, her eyes widening in disbelief. $37,462. This is the final chapter. Alright, everyone, it's time for the last update. I never imagined this would get as big as it did. My inbox is overflowing, and the awards and direct messages have been incredible. Thank you all for the overwhelming support and advices, even the not-so-kind critiques. While some labeled me as a petty individual, others hailed me as a hero. In truth, I think the reality is somewhere in between. When we last talked, I had just presented a spreadsheet to Lane, laying bare the grand total of all my unpaid efforts. $37,462. Trust me, I anticipated a reaction of utter disbelief. I thought she might cry, but what I didn't expect was for her to burst into laughter. Yes, you read that right, she laughed. It was an odd, nervous chuckle, like she thought I was pulling an elaborate prank on her. As she picked up my phone and scrolled through the meticulously kept list, she asked if I was being serious. When I didn't even crack a smile, her expression shifted. The realization hit her like a freight train. I had logged everything, from the quick 30-minute faucet repair to the extensive 3-weekend bathroom renovation. She tried to brush it off, saying, "We're married. We contribute in different ways." I challenged her to list 5 major things she had done for the house in the past year. The silence that followed was more telling than any answer. Then came the inevitable, million-dollar question. Why was I keeping track of all this? It was in that moment, as I looked at her, that I decided to finally confront her about everything I had overheard during her conversation with Amber that night. There I was, fixing the tile, and I caught every word. I listened as she casually dismissed me as nothing more than a maintenance worker. I heard how she didn't even bother with paying, and how they both shared a laugh about not needing to tip me. When I finally told her, I watched the color drain from her face. For a heartbeat, I expected her to deny it or claim I must have misheard. But instead, she whispered a soft, shaky "Oh God" and covered her mouth. Strangely, I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Done with being the invisible force that kept her world spinning smoothly, without so much as a nod of appreciation. I laid everything bare, how for 7 long years I had saved us thousands, while she treated my skills as if they held no value. Her sister had taken advantage of my labor too, never offering even the smallest thank you. She belittled me to her friends, reducing my genuine efforts and talents to nothing more than a cute little hobby of mine. It was time to break free from that thankless shadow. Instead of offering more excuses, something unexpected happened. Elaine actually listened. Her reaction was surprising. She burst into tears, not the manipulative kind, but the raw, uncontrollable sobs that come when someone realizes the magnitude of their mistakes. Through her tears, she confessed everything. Elaine admitted she had become so accustomed to me taking care of everything that she stopped seeing it as actual work. She revealed how she would joke about it with Amber because Amber always seemed to compete in relationships, and belittling me somehow made them feel superior. Elaine never paused to consider the true value of all the free labor I was providing. Despite her emotional outpouring, I stood firm. I explained I had already initiated discussions with Joel and was evaluating my options concerning our home. At that moment, Elaine didn't ask for time to mend our relationship. Wasn't that naive? Instead, she wanted to show she finally understood the enormity of the situation. When I realized something had gone awry, I agreed to give myself 2 weeks before making any lasting decisions. The very next day, I packed up and moved temporarily into Joel's spare room. I desperately needed space free from leaky faucets and malfunctioning appliances to clear my mind and think. What unfolded in the next 2 weeks took me completely by surprise. Elaine sent a text to Amber about the situation, expecting it to stay between sisters. Amber tried to dismiss it, suggesting Elaine was blowing things out of proportion. However, Elaine was having none of it. She took a screenshot of the entire exchange and shared it with the entire family group chat, parents included, unveiling what Amber had said about me while I was working tirelessly to fix up their homes. The family reaction was explosive. Their mom personally called me to offer her apologies, deeply embarrassed by the behavior of her daughter. Their dad, who struggles to change even a light bulb, was livid. He was outraged that Amber had not only used me for free labor, but also ridiculed me behind my back. 3 days later, Amber showed up at Joel's doorstep. She stood on his doorstep, tears streaming down her face, desperately pleading to speak with me. At first, I hesitated, but my curiosity eventually won out. The conversation quickly unraveled into Amber having a full-blown meltdown. It turns out that her family, outraged by her actions, had decided not to help her with the down payment on her new car. They suggested she might benefit from learning to handle her own problems rather than ridiculing those with practical skills. To make matters worse, her boyfriend, who worked in construction, left her abruptly once he heard her derogatory comments about people in his line of work. Honestly, watching her unravel like that had a certain schadenfreude to it. But truth be told, I felt no joy, no sense of justice, just an odd emptiness. I accepted her apology, but told her I needed time. Meanwhile, Elaine was having her own wake-up call. She began sending me daily updates about things breaking around her house, not to seek help, but to document her DIY efforts. Some of these updates were downright hilarious, like her attempt to fix the garbage disposal. According to her, YouTube made it look so easy. But there she was, fishing a spoon out with a coat hanger. Then there was the shower head replacement saga. The bathroom flooded twice, and not just on set twice. For different tutorials later, and half a bottle of drain cleaner gone. And yet, the hair monster still reigned supreme. She was genuinely making an effort, determined not to just call in the professionals, but to actually grasp the basics herself. Into the second week, she surprised me with something unexpected: a spreadsheet she'd created all on her own. She had meticulously gone through our photos spanning the last 7 years, documenting every single project I had ever completed. Next to each undertaking, she placed actual quotes from local contractors, totaling an eye-popping $43,217. I realized my initial guesses had severely underestimated the value. And there, at the bottom of her spreadsheet, she left a note that struck a chord deep within me. I might never be able to repay you for all of this, but I can start recognizing the worth of your contributions. Along with it, she included a receipt. She had signed up for a local workshop on basic home repairs, a 6-week course to sharpen her skills. When the 2 weeks concluded, I returned home for a chat. It felt like stepping into a different house. She had rearranged the living room to spotlight the built-in shelves I had crafted with care. She even framed before and after photos of the bathroom renovation and proudly displayed them in the hallway. It was like walking into a gallery celebrating the home we built together. It was strange yet profoundly moving. As we sat at the kitchen table, right beside the tile I'd prepared that night, we had the most candid conversation of our marriage. There was no yelling or crying, just pure, unfiltered honesty. She confessed that she had grown accustomed to our dynamic, where she would point out problems, and I would make them disappear as if by magic. She acknowledged that she had begun to see me more as a household appliance than as a partner with valuable skills. Spending time with Amber, she realized, had brought out her tendency to dismiss blue-collar work. I, in turn, admitted that I should have voiced my concerns years ago, instead of allowing resentment to fester. I confessed that I had found validation in being the fix-it guy until it became an expectation rather than an appreciated effort. Deep down, I feared that if I wasn't useful, I had no worth. We came to a mutual agreement about making some changes. I would teach her basic maintenance skills so she could understand the effort involved. For larger projects, we decided to share the cost of hiring outside help. It was a new beginning for us, grounded in understanding and respect. My journey with Joel was far from over. I craved the freedom that came with this choice. Meanwhile, Elaine finally began to recognize the value of my contributions, no longer downplaying my role in front of friends and family. In a bid to heal our relationship, we ventured into couples therapy, hoping to mend the rifts in our communication. Are we completely transformed? Absolutely not. Trust is like the foundation of a house. Once it's cracked, the repairs never quite restore it to its original strength, but we're making an effort. Just last weekend, the kitchen sink got clogged. Instead of immediately reaching for the tools myself, I turned to Elaine and asked how she wanted to tackle it. She proposed we handle it together. I taught her how to use a pipe wrench, and to my surprise, she didn't utter a word of complaint about the gross gunk we pulled from the trap. It's all about taking those small steps forward. As for Amber, she remains in the background of our lives, Recently, our whole family was in the doghouse. The tension was real. Just last week, she shot me a text, asking if I could take a look at her busted TV mount. I cheekily replied with a link to a handyman service and a little nudge to tip generously. But what's been the most surprising change? Well, just yesterday, I walked through the door to discover that Elaine had managed to install a ceiling fan in the guest room all on her own. Sure, it hung a bit crooked, and the pull chains were uneven, but it worked like a charm. She stood there, beaming with pride, phone in hand still showing the video that guided her through the process. I couldn't bring myself to fix it. Sometimes, things are perfect precisely because they're imperfect. So, here's the real story. Folks, there's no dramatic divorce or epic showdown. Just two imperfect individuals trying to reconstruct something that nearly fell apart. Like any good renovation, it's messy, costly, and always takes longer than expected. But maybe, just maybe, the foundation will emerge stronger once the dust settles.